Hello, and welcome to the live today. Good to be back, and as usual, starting these lives with a topic that's been raised. And today, what I'd like to do is talk about how we make multilingual events less English and more multilingual. So last week we had the International Day of Multilingualism, and for that day I was asked to help put together a program of events which we held on the Polyglot Conference live environment, and it was a very nice day. I enjoyed it a lot. I got a lot of very positive feedback from it, and the videos will be coming out slowly but surely as soon as I have the time to be able to get them all edited and uploaded in between other things that I do, like work and family things that I need to do as well at home. And I will definitely do my best to get them out as soon as possible. Right now, we've got the one out for Lindy, which was had a nice gap in between the very first one, so I had an hour to just pop it on to YouTube straight away. So I did that, and it needed very little editing, so I was quite lucky. But I will load more. And what I wanted to talk about really was some of the feedback that I got, I've heard before in the past, and that is that we talk a lot about multilingualism, but we do it a lot in English. And so there are a couple of things here. The first thing is that presentations that we get often are in English, and that probably sets the tone, I think, for other discussions, because if you present in English, or if you have people presenting in English, then the questions naturally will be in the language of the presentation. Someone's not going to randomly ask somebody who presented in English a question in Swahili or German or some other language. It's just not the thing that people tend to do. I think that people often present in English because they feel that it's the language that has the most reach. And let's be honest, English is a lingua franca. It is a world language. It is a language that many people learn, and indeed it's probably the most widely learnt language as a second language or third or whatever language, but as a foreign language, it's one of the most widely studied, if not the most widely studied in the world. And of course, with that, and with the sort of communications and fact that I'm talking now in my language, English, is testament to the fact that it does have quite a wide appeal to people, and people understand it readily, whether they're learning it or whether they're whether you or actually already speak it. There's an appeal to listening to English, I think. And also for me, it's a natural thing to do. I don't have any particular need or anything to be speaking lots of different languages all of the time to show that to people, because I use languages in my life anyway. And so for me, I've never really felt the need to do anything, to prove anything. It's always been a case of, how do I get a message across to the widest audience possible, and how do I present in front of an audience? Now, that means that when I do events, for example, it means that I do use English on stage very often, and it's because most of the people in the audience will understand English more than, say, they'd understand other languages that I can speak. A straw poll of conferences that I've been to tends to be that the audience is very international, but after English, it would probably be Spanish would be the language that people would understand the most. And if I were to speak in Spanish, I could probably speak and be understood by quite a lot of the audience as well. And indeed, when we were thinking of having the Polyglot Conference in Mexico, and that was the plan for last year, and it's the plan for this year, but we just don't know where we are with it yet. It felt that we would have been able to do that event a lot more in Spanish as well as English, because clearly it's in a Spanish-speaking country, and a lot of the internationals already speak Spanish anyway. The issue is that the events that I've run so far tend to be that they are in countries where people, the audience may not speak the local language. So I could kind of do token things in other languages, but not necessarily run the event properly in it. Now, aside from that, my sort of speaking, and I think probably me speaking in English is not the end of the world, but how do we get more people to present in other languages? Do they, like in Eurovision, the Eurovision Song Contest is a contest that happens every year. And years ago, people were not allowed to use other languages except for the languages of the country where they were coming from. And you'd have lots of different languages used. Nowadays, the Eurovision Song Contest is basically 90% in English. Most of the songs are in English, and it's because people know that people are used to hearing the language, so they think it's going to perform better, and it'll do better if it's just in English. And unfortunately, that's the way that that's happened. And I don't know whether that's a factor as well when people come to present in a language. They think that speaking in another language would actually reduce the audience numbers, would not have as far or wider reach. Of course, we can add subtitles, and we can do that to make sure that it is accessible. I would say that I would encourage more people to do that. The other issue that we have as well is that in the downtime of the conference, what people decide to choose to speak amongst each other is also a factor. And so at the conferences, I remember one time in Fukuoka, somebody came to me at the end of the conference and in English said to me, I really enjoyed the conference, but there was quite a lot of English spoken, and what could we do about that? And I looked at him kind of in amazement and said, okay, I'm looking at your name badge and we have maybe 8 languages in common, and you've come up to me and spoken to me in English about this. And so you're part of the problem. And and I mean, I didn't do that in a sort of in a way to sort of to throw that back at him, but I kind of did too. I didn't want to be sort of mean or anything like that, mean-spirited, but I did want to show that actually I believe that individuals in the community have a responsibility to make things multilingual, and it can't fall on one person or even a team of people who are organizing an event to make things multilingual in the downtime. I think that we give cards and we give people the option to ask say which languages they speak or which languages they want to speak or don't want to speak. And we even have rooms aside where people can say they don't speak English at many of these events. But if people choose to do that, or they choose not to use the language, and if they complain about it and they complain in English as well, it kind of doesn't make much sense to me, because I do think that's the responsibility of the individuals that come. And so I would love to see more inclusion of more languages, and definitely I would welcome more people reaching out and saying, I'd like to do this, or have an extra language exchange for this language or another language, and incorporate these things into the events that we set up. Because unfortunately, I'm only one person. I can't manage to do all of that myself. I need help from the language community to be able to make that the best multilingual experience possible. I've just been speaking now on Clubhouse about this exact issue, and we got a couple of ideas that could work in terms of setting up games and things like that, but they rely on sort of downtime, people getting involved, people submitting papers, of course, and giving presentations in other languages. But all of this moves away from the organizing team a little bit and puts it back onto the people applying to speak and to the people coming, to you as a polyglot conference, or as the language community. But you as an individual would need to make that change and to make a positive change. Most of the time, the things that I get back in terms of critiques or criticisms are quite good, in that they give me something tangible to work with. Where I find it more difficult and more challenging is when that criticism is sort of just sort of easily given, but nothing really is behind it. There's no positive initiative behind it. And I always look for a positive initiative. And I think that it's very easy to say this doesn't work, or this is wrong, or that's right, and this is wrong, and I do this differently. What I would say is I am open to positive ideas that we can work with, and people can come, and if you do have ideas of how to make things move forward, I'd love to hear from you, and I would love to see how we can make these events to the best for everyone, for the wider audience. What I can do is say that I would definitely poder, sim, posso, sim, posso fazer também em português. So what I would do is say, come to me and ask me if you've got, or give ideas, but also if you've got time to help to make things more multilingual. For example, Polyglot Conference website. Unfortunately, we don't have a budget. We're not a company with a big motor behind it to get everything translated or to do everything we want to do. So we do rely quite heavily on the goodwill of our community, and I would absolutely love to hear more from you about things that you think we could do. And eu gosto muito disso. Tinha uma pergunta em português, falando sobre as perguntas que agora estou falando sobre os problemas que tenho com a conferência políglota e com outras atividades, outros eventos que tenho. Eu gostaria de ver mais informações, mais coisas em outras línguas. Então, para mim, a coisa é assim. Vocês têm que fazer também um esforço para apresentar, para falar em outras línguas na conferência, mas também ter também ideias para como modificar, como colaborar juntos, como fazer um trabalho juntos para realmente tocar todo mundo, para fazer algo que seja uma conferência realmente multilingüe para todo mundo que vai ouvir e vai falar na conferência. Então, se se você tiver uma ideia ou uma oportunidade para ajudar, para melhorar o trabalho, para melhorar o trabalho da conferência, eu gostaria muito de saber isso de você e ter contato também. Então, temos algumas coisas que podemos fazer. São coisas como, por exemplo, organizar grupos juntos para praticar uma língua especificamente. Pode ter também uma tradução do sítio web da Polyglot Conference, que seria uma ocasião para ter as informações em outras línguas, não somente em inglês. Isso é uma coisa que não temos muito dinheiro para fazer isso com o dinheiro que temos da conferência, porque é uma conferência com o pago voluntário. Então, as pessoas que vão vir à conferência não têm que pagar para assistir. Então, vão participar solamente e principalmente somente assim, porque tem um amor de línguas, de idiomas como eu. Então, isso. Então, I hope that was ok, que vocês gostam disso. Em português também, a aplicação em português. Acho que é uma boa ideia também perguntar coisas em outras línguas. Cześć, Richard. Wyszli Swat, Wojtek, cześć. Nice to see you all. The second lingua franca, that's a good question, Timur. The second lingua franca, I think, is Spanish. Привет, Pruszka. Цікаво, чи не всі по-українськи. Розумім по-українськи. Не, I don't know how to say, не говорю по-українську. Saludos desde México. Hola, ¿qué tal? ¿Todo bien? Hello desde Turquía. Hola, hola. Merhaba. It's about time many of us have a saying for a long time, and I've been largely enabled. Yeah, I think it's okay. I think that this would be good, to have more information and more signage and things. These are things that if you can help with, Michael, please feel free to reach out, because I think this is the thing, is that our team, and I don't know how many of you realize how small our team is at the Polyglot Conference. We're a very small team. The issue is that we often get offers of help, but then because it's not paid work, it's just something we do for the community. It's amazing how quickly people drop off and don't stay. So if someone's got something serious that you can actually offer help and do it, that would be absolutely wonderful, and we'd love to hear from you. Unfortunately, our time is limited in terms of we only have 24 hours in the day. We have other things that we have to do as well to survive, and but we'd love to hear from you if you've got something you can help with. Are you talking about public speaking in English? It seems unreachable for me. So public speaking in English is what I am doing now, is speaking in English publicly, but this could be in other languages. And obviously the issues are still there. There's if I have an audience of, say, in Ljubljana, for example, of 700 people, and I were to address that audience in English, I think pretty much everyone spoke English well enough to understand what was happening. Whereas if I were to use another language, I would start reducing the amount of people who could understand the message. And of course, you can't translate the message into 10 languages or more for every single language represented, or even more than that, simply because time, money, and you'd never finish the basic welcome ceremony. It would be extremely difficult. But there are certainly things that we could do, and I'd love to see us do more of those kinds of things. Zdravo. Zdravo, Goran. Kako si? Let me see. Seria perfeito fazer coisas assim em diferentes línguas. Sim, eu gostaria de ver isso também. Acho que é uma coisa muito legal. É também com uma conferência, um evento assim, como por exemplo os eventos, language events que tenho também. Podemos fazer mais coisas assim em outras línguas. Eu gostaria de voltar para o Brasil para fazer alguma coisa no Brasil em português, em inglês, outras línguas também com vocês. Gostaria de fazer isso quando será possível. Agora mesmo é difícil com a pandemia, tá? Mas mais difícil. Hi, Timothy. I completely agree. The best way to promote multilingualism is speaking other languages, so practice what you preach. Actually, do you have a favorite equivalent expression in another language? Do you know what? I don't know. I've never really thought about it. But yeah, I agree with you that it's definitely better to do things in different languages. Napisal, ten komentar v angličtině. No ten není problém. Jsem rozuměl, no, bez problémů, takže není to problém. Ale ты думал о сессии живой в другом языке. Ну, я делаю это сейчас, например. Я говорю по-русски, по-чешски, по всех языках без проблем с вами. Это для меня... Я могу сказать, что я хочу для конференции или здесь. В принципе, это для меня без проблем, но это как на конференции, это чуть-чуть разная ситуация, потому что надо использовать язык, потому что там есть цель. Я хочу сказать это, потому что надо продолжить с конференцией. И поэтому это чуть-чуть разные эта ситуация. Но, в принципе, это тоже возможно. В сайте интернете, например, написать все информация на других языках. Это тоже это бы было возможно. Да, почему? Что будет и на русском или на чешском, я не знаю, это возможно и для меня тоже, и делать перевод и на французском, на английском, и на испанском и так далее. Sono d'accordissimo, è molto piacevole sentirti parlare lingue diverse durante questa sessione. Grazie. Allora per me è anche così. Mi piace tanto parlare varie lingue, ho studiato le mie lingue per fare questo, allora per me fa lo stesso. Io potrei parlare soltanto in inglese, ma non è così interessante anche per me, ma capisco anche che è una lingua che tantissime persone già capiscono bene, allora aiuta molto per trasmettere un po' le informazioni che veramente bisogna sapere per organizzare una conferenza. Quindi ecco il mio problema con le lingue. So it's a great idea, Timothy, throwing the expression. Yeah. It's an interesting thing, Timothy, that you mentioned this about expressions, because one of the ideas that we had on the Clubhouse chat was to have a game where you have an expression in a language and then you have to try and see how it would work in other languages. I thought that would be quite a cool thing to do. Nice to see you all joining. Thank you. So Keenan, you would have imagined Chinese would be a good second lingua franca. Surprisingly not. A lot of the events, I mean, if you were to have an event in Asia where there are a number of Chinese speakers coming, possibly, but generally as on a world level, in the language learning community, I don't think the amount of people who speak Chinese to that degree are yet present. It tends to be still a little bit niche in that sense. So that's been my experience so far. Could change. Oh, Simon, you absolute legend. Okay. Okay, let me see. I love that you're writing these things. Though. This is nice to see your okay. Yeah, I really like that idea as well of having different expressions in different languages and seeing how we put them into other languages. I really like that idea. А как нас нет по-русски? Ну, во всем. Скажите, пожалуйста, какой язык является родным для вас? Вот интересно, я с изучением какого языка вы начали свой путь полиглоте. Мне что я немного знаете польский. Да, хорошо, но для меня мой родный язык это английский, но в принципе я говорю по-македонски дома, потому что это родный язык моей жены. Мы говорим только по-македонски дома, это в принципе тоже славянский язык, как русский. И если это влияется, я не знаю, как я говорю по-английски, например, нет, но как я могу использовать еще русский язык, когда я, в принципе, здесь я не говорю по-русски никогда. Я только иногда у меня текст или телевизор по-русски, но, в принципе, я использую русский язык в моей жизни здесь, в Македонии. Это никогда. Но если я хочу говорить по другим языкам, например, это тоже возможно, потому что когда я изучаю один язык, и это, например, как славянский язык или германский, или германская фамилия языков, или другие языки из латинской, например, и это помогает очень много, потому что, в принципе, я могу использовать мое знание других языков, а не использовать другие языки из самой фамилии. И это очень помогает. Если у вас русский и польский, я думаю, что на это бы было такой процесс, и как для меня с русским, вы можете очень легко изучать еще и чешского, или словацкого, или... Я думаю, что очень хороший язык это был сербский или хорватский, потому что там есть другая группа языков из самых славянских фамилий языков. И я думаю, что это отличный язык здесь, на Балкане, например. Вы можете использовать сербский или хорватский для путешествия здесь, на Балкане, генерально это очень хороший язык. Если у вас тоже интерес в других группах языков, это тоже возможно изучаться, еще и започаться говорить или по-испански, или по-португальски, по-немецки. Немецкий очень хороший язык. И с английским, я думаю, что для меня, для работы, я использую очень много немецкий, английский, потом, может быть, французский и так далее. Но тоже дома, в принципе, я говорю по этих языках. Okay, so let me just see if I can check any more questions that we have here. Let's see. Oh, wow. Okay, I can see a few more questions in here. Als je zo'n speltje organiseert, waarbij je uitdrukkingen in verschillende talen vergelijkt, doe je heel graag mee. Ja, dan even doen, hè? Ja, dat zal mooi zijn, vind ik. What do you think of the criteria for a new lingua franca? Israel, you know what? I don't know. I think it's very difficult for English now to sort of lose its status of lingua franca, simply because so many countries use English as a lingua franca, and that plays a really important role. And so I don't know if it will ever change. I know that some people wrote to me and said, "Well, why don't you use Esperanto?" Thing is, I'm in a similar problem. I've got a similar problem that I'd be talking to a group of people, but only a certain fraction of that audience would understand me, and also not only that, but only even smaller fraction would be able to actually reply to what I'm saying, and this is a problem. This is a real problem, especially when you're talking about events, right? You're not talking about you want to be sort of it's weird because you're talking about multilingualism. You want to be as inclusive as you can, and you're using English because it's kind of inclusive, but it's also exclusive. I mean, I wish I had the answer, and this is why I'm genuinely asking people for their thoughts and feedback and ideas, because I honestly do not know how you can sort of. I don't think you can make everyone happy with this. I mean, I'm under no illusions that everyone's going to be happy with every single result. It's what do they say? If you try and please everybody all of the time, you end up pleasing no one. So that's kind of the way the world is. But I would say that it would be good to sort of get more ideas, and I'm definitely open to more ideas. Alex, happy Easter. Thank you very much. You're using Asimil for Spanish in combination with Anki. What else would you recommend? If you're using Asimil for Spanish and you started, I'd recommend watching Extra on. You can go on YouTube, type in EXTR and the @ sign, and then Spanish as a separate word, and watch the Extra series for Spanish learners on there. Give you a bit of a fun downtime to listen to Spanish with subtitles, and it's basic Spanish, so you'll start getting the idea quite quickly. Let me see. I want to see if I can get some more of these questions. Okay, indeed. Do you have to be? You have to be careful. Okay, I'm seeing there's a conversation here on on YouTube, and I'm not going to get into the. I love the conversation you're having about phrases. What's your opinion about the boom of old languages, Latin, Old Greek, being spoken nowadays? Do you think Latin can become lingua franca again? Highly doubt it, Michael. I doubt it because it's not. I mean, there's definitely people who want. There are definitely people out there who want to speak it, and I like that. I like the sound of Latin personally. I think becoming a lingua franca again, I can't see it happening. But I do like that there's a boom of this kind of thing. I enjoy hearing languages being used again after a pause, and certainly there are people who will, you can go and do courses as well, and there are even courses on YouTube where you can spoken Latin and stuff. That's quite cool. Salam okay. Okay, unfortunately, Faith, I can't understand Swahili, so please Unfortunately, yeah, I can't understand what you've written, but it's nice to see you here from Kenya. Okay, hi Richard, do you think languages shape the way we think? Lucas, I don't know, in a way yes, and in a way no. So I think the culture that the language uses, so the culture uses the language as a vehicle, right? And I think the culture um, um, helps to shape the way we think. Language possibly to a degree, but I think culture more than language. And I'll explain why. Because I think you could learn the words and the grammar of a language, and you could even improvise words that don't exist or expressions that don't exist and come up with your own, and it still be that language. It's just maybe not understood by the vast majority of people. Whereas the culture will just have different ways of thinking of things, and when they see certain things in the world, they will explain them and understand them in different ways. So I think that's cultural more than linguistic. Although the language is, as I say, used as a vehicle to transmit the culture. So yeah, I would say that the culture comes before the language. Is my first yeah, my first thought. But I like that question. Um, okay, hi Richard. This is my first time listening to you online. I feel very, thank you very much. That's very kind of you. The poly, like say, see, okay, Richard, do you still have opportunities to speak European Portuguese? Not really. I don't have really many opportunities to speak Portuguese at all. I just use it online nowadays, but I do enjoy it. Hello, Richard. How does speaking two unrelated foreign languages help one's brain? Como falar duas línguas estrangeiras não relacionadas ajuda o cérebro? Então, para fazer isso, eu acho que para um, Então, para o cérebro, ajuda para não ter problemas de memória mais tarde, e também para reflexionar e reagir de uma maneira diferente. Isso ajuda muito com isso. E para reflexionar sobre problemas, por exemplo, na vida em geral. Para fazer isso, então, a plasticidade cerebral também ajuda para ter mais movimento entre as, 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 as várias partes do cérebro. Ajuda com isso, para ter mais conexões. Então, isso. So yeah, I was just saying that I think it's, I'll say it in English as well. So I think with neuroplasticity, we call it in English. And with connection. So I think speaking more than one language helps with that, because you can put them together. You also see things that maybe you wouldn't see if you spoke just one language. Okay, Israel, you're thinking more about a secondary lingua franca. Okay, secondary lingua franca. To my mind, in the language learning community, I think the second lingua franca is Spanish. From what I've seen, I think that Spanish is the second most understood language amongst people in the language learning community that I've come across. Is Esperanto a modern language? How long has it been around? Craig, Esperanto is a modern language. It's still spoken by it's spoken by more people now, I think, than it has been in a long time. And it's been around since the late 1800s. It was created by Dr. Zamenhof, and he created it really as an idea to have a language that was neutral, so that nobody had it as their strong national language. It was the neutral language that people could have talks in and do everything in without anybody having sort of a higher position or a position of authority in a way, so that people would speak on a level. And the idea is nice. I just don't think it's caught on in that way. It's still used by a lot of people, especially people who like Esperanto. I mean, I personally enjoy Esperanto. And when I go to some events, I get to use it, which is great. But yeah, I mean, it's been adopted on a number of different language learning platforms, so you can learn it very easily, and definitely recommend learning it. It's fun. À mon avis, peut-être il vaut mieux d'organiser la conférence dans l'un des pays majeurs en Europe. Par exemple, en France, Espagne, Allemagne, parce que les langues dans ce pays sont les langues les plus parlées, je dirais. Après, je ne vois pas les mots après. Mais enfin, oui, euh, c'est, oui, c'est vrai. Euh, Mais à mon avis aussi, il faut pas avoir forcément le pays. Bah, ça sert un peu, pour moi, ça sert un peu dommage juste rester en Europe avec la conférence polyglotte. Mais oui, c'est vrai que si on avait la conférence polyglotte euh, dans un pays comme l'Espagne, la France ou bien l'Allemagne, ça serait bien possible d'en faire une conférence euh, plutôt bilingue, je dirais. Et ce que je vois, par exemple, avec les conférences dans ce pays-là, c'est que elles ont vraiment tendance à devenir des conférences bilingues et pas forcément multilingues. Et c'est ça, en fait, que j'aimerais bien voir, si c'est possible, d'avoir une conférence vraiment multilingue. Euh, mais oui, ça c'est vrai que dans un pays comme ça, en Europe, avec une langue si forte dans plusieurs pays, comme le français, l'espagnol ou l'allemand, une langue qu'on apprend à l'école très souvent dans plusieurs pays, ça va aider, ça c'est clair, à avoir plus de langues, plus de présentations au moins dans une autre langue. Le problème que je pourrais prévoir, c'est que pour les gens qui sont du pays même, ils vont aller à une conférence comme ça pour pouvoir pratiquer leur langue étrangère. Donc, je pourrais bien imaginer que les francophones, ou les Allemands ou les Espagnols vont vouloir pratiquer une autre langue. Et très souvent, c'est l'anglais qu'ils veulent pratiquer. Ça, c'est un autre problème que j'ai aperçu. Et je dis pas ça pour faire en fait, pour en faire des problèmes, mais c'est ça ce que j'ai prévu un peu pour le Mexique. Parce que quand on voulait organiser la conférence polyglotte à Cholula, moi j'aimerais bien faire tout ça en espagnol et en anglais aussi, bien sûr, parce que il faut savoir que pour les gens du pays même qui vont pas peut-être voyager, qui ont l'opportunité de parler avec des étrangers, ils veulent pratiquer des langues étrangères. Et ça veut aussi, ça veut dire aussi la langue anglaise. Parce que très souvent, la langue la plus étudiée parmi les étudiants à l'école ou les élèves à l'école, c'est l'anglais. Et donc, très souvent, ils veulent pratiquer aussi l'anglais dans un contexte multilingue ou bien bilingue. Et aussi dans les pays comme par exemple la France ou bien la France, l'Espagne et l'Allemagne, comme tu as écrit là, le problème, ce qu'on a aussi, c'est que dans les trois pays, en fait, ils ont très peu de contact avec l'anglais parce que c'est des pays, généralement, je ne parle pas des zones touristiques, je parle en général, la vie quotidienne est dans leur langue. Et donc, pour eux, aller à une conférence polyglotte ou bien euh, conférence linguistique et parler leur langue, pour eux, c'est l'ennui. Et ça, c'est aussi un peu le problème que j'ai des fois. J'espère que tu vas comprendre ce que je veux dire, mais enfin, c'est ça. Euh, je ne veux pas reposer des problèmes, mais c'est... En fait, moi, je veux trouver une solution. Je ne veux pas forcément juste parler de ça et dire oui, 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 je suis d'accord, je suis d'accord. Si je suis d'accord, mais il y a des problèmes d'autres, en fait, qu'on pourrait avoir, en fait, après. Et donc, j'aimerais bien lire des idées, des commentaires supplémentaires pour avancer un peu le thème, quoi, pour trouver une solution. Richard, I have a quick question. Do you still, okay, I saw that one for European Portuguese, yes. Um, and again, okay. I have considered learning, have you considered learning Catalan? Sì, parlo català també. Sí, perquè vaig estudiar català a la Universitat Carolina de Praga, un any de català, i també All'universitat in Inghilterra també, en Anglaterra, parlava també una mica de català amb unes persones sí, de Catalunya, de Barcelona. Doncs, sí. Mm, okay, let me see if I can see this. Okay, 1 second. Hi Richard, would you recommend using the advanced series after the meal after initial course? Would you using the advanced series of Asimil after using the resources after the initial course? For sure, if they exist. I mean, there are some really nice things in the advanced courses. I've seen the ones for German, Spanish, Italian, and French, and they're nice. I haven't used them myself because when I came to Asimil, I already spoke those languages, so it was a little bit trickier. But yeah, what I've read of them, I've enjoyed them. Okay. Which language seems stranger for you? Like the most foreign. There are so many different languages. It's difficult to say. I'm not sure. Unfortunately. Gabrielle, do you use apps like Memrise or Closemaster? Yeah, on occasion I do. Yes, absolutely. In fact, I've been enjoying using Speakly recently. It's been quite good, and playing with their Estonian and Finnish languages on there. They've been quite fun, and yeah, and Link as well. I like Link as well. But yeah, Closemaster I also have used, and Memrise a little bit less, but yes, I have. Okay, Oscar Lagun Richard. Uh-huh. Okay. So I understand some of these some of this in Euskara because I've studied a little bit but not enough. So I've studied a little bit. I don't have any Basque friends in here at the moment, but there was a Basque family that lived in Skopje for a while, and so I learned a few words, and but I'd love to learn more Basque. I think it's fantastic. It's great. Yes, only 200 years old. Yes, that's Esperanto. Yes, absolutely. Salut Richard, laisse-moi savoir si jamais on fait la Polyglot Conference en Espagne. Bien sûr. Tu vas m'aider, Carlos? Yeah, constructed languages are one of the case. Blah, 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 multilingual. Okay, multicultural London English has been around since the 1980s. I understand that it is the result of cultural interaction of West African, Jamaican, South Asian, Yiddish, Cockney sounds and accents. Yes, there's a lot of interesting things. Because blanco, cuando hablas otra lengua que no sea la tuya, es que hablan mucho, un poco del fracaso en los políglotas. Es que la verdad, para mí, hay muchos idiomas que no sé bien, pero a veces es que no pasa nada. Para mí me da igual. Si no entiendo algo, no sé hablar bien, pues para mí no pasa nada. Continúo con mi rollo. Y, y para mí los idiomas son cosas para comunicar mis ideas, ¿no? Y generalmente, pues no. Sí, la verdad es que si puedo aprender algo, encantado, pero tampoco si no funciona, si no sé, podemos cambiar de idiomas o al menos puedo aprender algo. Así que no sé, que es un poco difícil responder a esto, pero sí. Para mí, y fracasos, hablando de fracasos, por ejemplo, sí, yo hablo de mi fracaso con varias cosas cada día. Así me parece en mi vida. Pero no sé hasta qué punto va a ayudar. Es que estaba hablando, por ejemplo, sobre, tenía un mes cuando estaba estudiando el coreano y, y no podía estudiar durante un mes y estaba estudiando, todo este año quería estudiar el coreano, pero no podía hacer nada durante un mes y escribí un blog sobre esto y hice también un live sobre este tema. Y la verdad es que pasa, a veces pasa así. Tienes un periodo en tu vida cuando no tienes motivación o no tienes ganas, no tienes posibilidades para utilizar el idioma, para estudiar más, y ya quieres dejar el idioma o no sé. Así que para mí es así. Y sé que si estamos hablando de fracaso, no sé, fracaso sí que, pero forma parte también del aprendizaje, ¿no? De idiomas. Es que hay que hablar de esto de vez en cuando. Mi amigas Esperanton, ĝi estas amuza lingvo. Yes, mi pensas ke ĝi estas tre vera interesa lingvo. Tre plaĉas al mi. Would MLE possibly become more accessible if it were taught in comparative pronunciation? I don't know what that is. Sorry, MLE. Do you know any Austronesian languages? No, the closest I have is I've studied some Maori. So sort of that's kind of where I got to with that part of the world, Maori. Is realize that true? Do you know Africa? Okay, let's see. Τη βιβλία η μαθήματα ιστορίες για φιλανδικά. Για φιλανδικά έχω εδώ, μόνο μισό λεπτό να δω. Αυτό είναι. Αυτό ήταν τα βίβλια μας από την Φινλανδία. Αυτό είναι το Σώμα Μέσταρη. Νομίζω ότι είναι πάρα καλό βιβλίο για τα φινλανδικά. Αλλά όλα τα πράγματα είναι μόνο... έχω αυτό, είναι μόνο γράψει στα φινλανδικά. Δηλαδή δεν υπάρχει κανένα άλλη γλώσσα. Είναι μόνο στα φινλανδικά, αλλά είναι πάρα πολύ καλά. Και έμαθα, ήμουν μόνο 2 μήνες στη Φινλανδία γι' αυτό και έκανα νομίζω 3 βιβλία, υπάρχουν 4 βιβλία και μόνο έκανα μόνος μου στο σπίτι αυτό το πρώτο, και το δεύτερο και το τρίτο έκανα στο πανεπιστήμιο στη Φινλανδία, στη Χελσίνκη, και αυτό είναι μόνο μέχρι το νομίζω Α2, έτσι. Α2, και με το τρίτο νομίζω θα είναι λίγο περισσότερο Α2, Β1, έτσι. Και μετά υπάρχει και το τετάρτο, και γι' αυτό νομίζω ότι είναι μέχρι το Β1, νομίζω. Και μετά πρέπει να κάνεις κάτι άλλο, από τα νέα, στο τηλεόραση, και κάτι άλλο. Και υπάρχει τα νέα και στα φινλανδικά, στο διαδίκτυο, και νομίζω μπορούμε να κάνουμε κάτι και μόνο από τα νέα από τη χώρα και από την χώρα. Και έτσι είναι δυνατόν να μάθουμε καλύτερα. Ναι. Okay, I'm trying to see if I can see any other questions here. Okay. I've learnt language 1 proficiency in language 3. What would make easier for me to learn Chinese? Would it be particularly hard for me? So Aquarian Christianity, you could, there's not really an easy answer to this. Chinese, if you get stuck on tones and worrying about tones too much, that can be a real stumbling block with Chinese. So my advice would be to just sort of learn to say what you want to say, like as phrases as well. Simply because if you get stuck on individual tones in Chinese, what you find is as you learn it, you're sort of learning these tones, you're going this ma, 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 and you're getting so bogged down on how you pronounce one individual sort of syllable. But when you put them together, it changes anyway. It's like you learn what For example, the word for not in Chinese to negate a sentence is bu. It's a falling tone. So bu. But then when you put it with a word, 不是, 不是. So you get another falling tone. It goes 不是. and the other problem is when you learn all these tones like this, like crazy, your head starts going up and down, and you look a bit absurd. So this is actually advice that one of my friends, Vlad, gave. He said he wished people didn't get so stuck on tones in Chinese. He thought that it would be better to just sort of learn the language and get on with the learning and learn how it's pronounced in an absolute, in a sentence, and in a more natural way. Okay. Let me see. Okay. 한국어, これもですか? Okay. So this is for, I think you're asking me about Korean. It's going okay, thank you. 元気です. It's good. いいです. でも、今は、韓国語を、毎日、勉強します。クラブハウスに、私の、韓国語のクラブあります。私の TikTok とミンコリアンの本は、this is 勉強します. So there we go. That's my terrible Japanese. But it's been a long, long time since I've been able to say anything in Japanese. Do forgive me. Okay, it seems pointless to say a natural language is young. Okay, sorry, I'm trying to read through these comments and the conversations as well. It's nice to see you all talking to each other. What language isolates have you studied? So I studied some a number of languages that I suppose you could describe as that, although they have so at the moment I'm doing Korean, but I don't know if it's a language isolate so much, because there's so much sort of connection to the other Sino influenced languages as well, and it feels similar to the bit of Japanese that I've studied years ago. I've done some Basque a while back, but not so much. Kaisho Lagunak, Kaisho Sermos. Oh my god, I'm still learning Japanese. Korean, I'm so glad I understood you. Thank you. That's very kind. Okay, let me see if I can see any more questions here. Do you speak Arabic? Unfortunately, not really. Que hola contigo. ¿Qué tal, Tim? ¿Todo bien? Muy bien. A ver, ahora. I don't know what's happening on Instagram. Instagram keeps stopping for some reason. I'm so sorry. There's an excellent Basque teacher. Yeah, there's some really good Basque teachers up in italki. Groet uit Rotterdam, Richard. Ja, bedankt hoor. Ja, groetje terug uit Macedonië. Ja, mooi zeg. Even kijken. Privet. Okay, I think that unfortunately with Instagram, it's not been the best connection for some reason. I don't understand why not, but it's not. I'm doing my best to understand. So Korean is generally considered a language isolate, yes, unless you consider Jeju another one. Yeah, I think it is. I find it quite interesting that with Korean, as I say, there are so many words that sort of I get to, and then it's like, okay, it's a Sino word, or the grammar reminds me of Japanese. So I know it is a language isolate in that way, but it's not like sort of, I think Basque is the kind of the true language isolate in terms of you look at it and it's totally different. I mean, even actually in groups of languages, sometimes a language in a group, in a language family, will feel more like a language isolate. I would say Hungarian, it has that feel to it, because yes, it's related to other languages in the group, but it's been so isolated over many, many years that really it does feel more like a language isolate, in terms of the how you actually speak it, and the words, and the grammar is it's quite different to Finnish or Estonian or something. It really has very little in common with them. But Japanese and Korean are so similar in grammar. Yes, they are. I don't buy the story that it is an isolate. Tim Keeley, the authority on this, has spoken. I love it. Yeah, thank you, Tim. It doesn't feel the same. It doesn't feel like a language isolate, the Korean. I've got to be honest, it really doesn't. And when I see so much from other languages that I studied bits of in the past, it's very difficult for me to kind of see it like I see Basque. And be interested in knowing which other language isolates you think, or what feels like a language isolate is probably a good way of putting it. Because I would argue that Hungarian feels like a language isolate a lot more than say Korean. Maybe that's just me. That's just how I feel about Korean. Korean and Hungarian, from the bit of study that I've done of both. But yeah, that's kind of my feeling at the moment. Is the differences in grammar, for example, how I found my studying Finnish compared to Hungarian, or Estonian compared to Hungarian, and yeah, Albanian language isolate. Possibly Albanian could feel a bit like a language isolate. There are grammatical features that are shared between Albanian, Greek, Macedonian, Bulgarian, and Romanian. And there's an awful lot of vocabulary that's from. So Albanian is kind of, it's like Turkish and Italian net, and there were like lots, and then there's the sort of the old Albanian words as well. But there's so many words from Turkish and in the sort of the daily conversations that people have on the street, and then there's a lot of sort of Latin vocabulary as well. How's my Korean going? Very slowly is the answer to that question. Very slowly indeed. I think that it will take me a while to get anywhere, to even a basic level in Korean. It's going to take me a while. Hopefully, I will be able to say it by the end of this year. I can hold a basic conversation. That would be very, very nice. I don't have any pretensions to be speaking like really amazing Korean. I mean, I'm not. At the moment, I keep forgetting really basic things, and so even like basic verbs that I think I should know. What happens to me is this: that I start learning a verb. So I'll learn a verb, and you learn the da form, which is the infinitive in Korean, and then I'll conjugate it, and then I'll use it in the conjugated form, and then I forget what the da form is, and then I'll see it again, and I draw a blank, and I shouldn't, but it happens. I mean, it feels like you kind of one step forward, two steps back sometimes with Korean. I think because it's so different. Some of the words are so similar to other words that it's easy to confuse sometimes. That can be a bit of a pain. Yeah, Tim's saying he's seen some other aspects of Hungarian that he's not seen in other languages. The two conjugations of for transitive verbs, depending on the direct object and the definite and indefinite. Yeah, absolutely. It's very strange with a language. I think it's interesting as well, isn't it? Does Albanian have any of the Sprachbund characteristics shared among Greek, Macedonian? Yes, it does, Tim. So Greek. The thing that they all have in common: Greek, Macedonian, Bulgarian, Romanian, Romanian and Albanian, is that they don't really have a proper infinitive. Like the infinitive in Romanian does have an infinitive, so that's why I kind of with Romanian, but you conjugate normally. So you have I want that I do, I want that I go, I want that, and that's the general way that you do it. So the first verb is in the indicative mood, and the second form typically is in the subjunctive mood, but most of those languages, like Macedonian, for example, you don't see a difference in form, so there's not really a subjunctive mood in the same way. In Albanian, there is a different form for some of the personal pronouns, not for all of them. And it's the same in Romanian, and in Bulgarian, it's like in Macedonian, similar. And then in Greek, there's an entirely different form for the subjunctive form, for the subjunctive mood that you put. Sort of, you change it. So in Greek, it's a little bit different though, because it feels a bit more like in Slavic languages when you talk about imperfective and perfective verbs. So it's sort of, you talk about subjunctive mood, and it's described in some of the grammars as a subjunctive mood, but it's not really that in Greek. It feels more like the Slavic. Oh, this is really complicated, isn't it? I've just realized how complicated this is to explain. But yeah, it's there's basically the two separate sort of conjugated verb forms that are together in a sentence. Instead of like in English, where you'd say I want to go, and you have to go as your infinitive. Ich will gehen auf Deutsch. I want to go. Je veux aller. Je quiero ir. Voglio andare. Whatever you want to say in the other languages. But in these languages, in the Balkan languages, they say I want that, I do this. Yeah, that's basically it. Anyway, I'm going to wrap this up now on Instagram. I'm sorry that it's been a bit buggy today, and we will speak again next week. If any of you are on Clubhouse, please do follow me, and I'm going to do another talk on Thursday in Clubhouse, and I do a Clubhouse event before these lives on Sunday too, in the Polyglot Conference Club. So if you are not on Clubhouse, I hope you'll be able to join soon. I found it a very useful way to connect to different people, and people who are not necessarily in our community on these other channels. So hopefully we'll bring more people, and hopefully Clubhouse will open up to more and more people, and you'll all get the benefit of how great it is in to practice your languages. Nice to see you all. Enjoy the rest of your days, and speak to you soon. Bye-bye.